I've thought of expanding my content for a while now. I've been focusing on video game theories for a while, and now, I think it's important for me to try my hand at real-life theories. I am here to present to you one of the most specific Bible prophecies we've found, one we have to place as written before the event in question happened, something which counts an exact day count for centuries after it was written. It's one I'm sure Bible critics have heard a lot, but I think it's one they don't understand the full implications of. I will bring up the verse, address most of the counterclaims I can think of, and allow the viewers to come to their own conclusions regarding this prophecy. It begins in Daniel 9:23, from the words of an angel. At the beginning of thy supplications the commandment came forth, and I am come to shew thee, for thou art greatly beloved, therefore understand the matter, and consider the vision. 77s are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand, that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 sevens and 62 sevens, the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in true blues times. And after 62 sevens shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 7, and in the midst of the 7 he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Now, let's unpack these various pieces, and acknowledge the fact that the 70th 7 is debated among different denominations. This prophecy was given in a time when the entirety of the Jews were exiled. The capital city, Jerusalem, was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, and their people were taken into captivity. So, what was one thing they were waiting for? The rebuilding of the city. The Jews were allowed to return to their homeland during the reign of Caesar, but an official decree to rebuild the city did not come around until King Ahasuerus Xerxes a few years later. This decree was either written in 444 BC or 445 BC, and it was written in the Hebrew month of Nisan. Nisan begins in the March-April area. Now we have an important question: what is a 7? There will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens until the appearance of Messiah. Well, I think the most reasonable answer is that it represents a length of time. If 77s are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. It sounds like a length of time. A set portion of time for various things to take place. Now, how long is that period of time? It could be days, weeks, years, or Shemitah cycles, maybe even jubilees. I'm going to make the claim that 7s directly translates to a period of 7 years. Now, this addresses our first counterclaim. Most translations say weeks instead of 7s. You do have to understand that Bible translations are not one-to-one. Oh, scandalous. I do not by any means think the standard of the true religion is based on consistently accurate translation. It's okay if even they're not perfect, the translations, that is. Especially when we get into what we'll say later. If you load up Bible Gateway now, go to any translation which includes footnotes, you will find that the most literal translation of this word would be 7s. Now, in English, we generally don't use 7s as a measurement of time, hence why it's often translated as weeks. But the original Hebrew has the capacity to mean 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months, 7 years, 7 Shemitahs, or 7 jubilees. Something rather interesting happens when we go under the interpretation of years. Now, we also do have to consider. In the past, a year was defined differently than it is today, and if we're analyzing a prophecy given to an ancient people, we need to understand God would be speaking to them using those ancient definitions. So, in what way are years defined differently? Well, in the days of science, we've found out that the Earth finishes rotating the Sun at about every 365 and a quarter days. In the past, ancient people defined years by the cycles of the moon. By 12 cycles of the moon did they count the years, with an occasional leap month in various cultures. This would make the ancient year average to about 360 days rather than 365, but this is still a year in the sense that the word year is a construct of human perception. So, let's take our first piece. Our starting point is the decree of Ahasuerus to rebuild Jerusalem in 444 or 445 BC. Now we have to wait for what is defined as 7 sevens and 62 sevens to our next event. If we take sevens to mean a period of 7 lunar years, we get a total of 69 sevens, which means 483 lunar years. So, 483 lunar years after the decree of Ahasuerus brings us to 32 or 33 AD. We crossed the line from BC to AD, I wonder if that means anything? Know therefore and understand, that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 483 lunar years. On Nisan 10, of one of 2 years, either 32 or 33 AD, Jesus of Nazareth rode into the city of Jerusalem on the colt of a donkey. Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. To be cut off is a Hebrew idiom for death. And so Jesus Christ died, not for himself, but for us. So we have this count of lunar years that brings us to the day Jesus entered Jerusalem, and to the year of his crucifixion. This, to me, has always been scary. Scary in a good way, scary in a comforting way. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. 70 AD is when the temple was destroyed, something Jesus spoke direct warnings about. Now, the 70th week is hotly contested. Understandably so. Some denominations think it's about events that happened shortly after Christ's resurrection, some think it's an outstanding week and the prophetic clock has been paused due to the new dispensation. It is honestly hard to analyze, and it's not really my focus in making this video. I do think the 70th week is something I can fairly say I don't know about. It's not as relevant to the point I'm trying to make. Now, let me address some counterclaims. Prophecy is so vague, how do you know this is the author's intent? Well, I think the big thing we need to discuss is what sevens mean in this situation to get the meaning. The city being rebuilt, the arrival of Messiah, the cutting off of Messiah, the cutting off of Messiah, the destruction of the temple. These are all very specific and literal events. There is no metaphor, apart from cut off, which is a well-known idiom. Sevens is the big thing that needs to be interpreted, and mentioning one event after the other makes me think it's a time-based thing. Weeks is a too specific word for the Hebrew word used in the chapter, and the fact is, we do have a very specific event pinpointed exactly 483 lunar years after the decree. Another counterclaim is that a lot of people claim to be Messiah. Why is Jesus the fulfillment? Well, it is true that a lot of people claim to be Messiah, but not a lot of people were sentenced to death for it. In Judaism, claiming you are the Messiah is not considered blaspheme, they were weirdly tolerable about that. Instead, they considered people who called themselves the Son of God to be blaspheme, something Jews didn't dare to do nearly as frequently. Jesus was the prime messianic candidate in history who was arrested, slandered, and killed at the exact time Daniel said the Messiah would be. Something God would likely want to make common knowledge, to make it one of the biggest religions in the world. And now there's a third counterclaim: coincidence. That is the biggest coincidence in the history of coincidences that ever coincidenced. It requires a lot of faith to believe that's a coincidence. It is, admittedly, hard to debunk coincidences apart from probability, but this just seems highly improbable. So, my challenge to the skeptics would be this: find a naturalistic explanation for the fulfillment of this prophecy, apart from coincidence. If you still believe it to be coincidence, that's fine, but I'd rather hear a real challenge to the Daniel 9 prophecy that gets people to think. An accurate prophecy about the future gets people to think, but the fruit of the prophecy is really what we look at to determine its source. And what was the fruit of the Daniel 9 prophecy? The fruit was love. Self-sacrificial love. We may not understand it, it's not like it's something God even had to do for us. But it was the way He chose to show love to the people of the world, self-sacrifice. So, let us not only focus on God's skill with numbers, but His commitment to fulfill His promises, even at the expense of Himself. And so when God promises salvation, He provides salvation.